Right, so a Tory MP is preparing to take his own Tory government to court over their stance on the ongoing Palestine Israel crisis on the basis that their advocacy for one side and one side alone, and that side being the oppressor, the decades-long aggressor of the State of Israel, actually makes them complicit in the ongoing war crimes being committed, because they can be seen to be egging them on by backing them unequivocally, whatever they do. Backbench Tory MP Crispin Blunt just happens to also be the director of the ICJP, the International Centre for Justice for Palestinians, and they've issued a threat of legal action on the government and any other politicians for whom evidence can be linked to aiding and abetting war crimes. So Keir Starmer might be in a spot of bother too. Right, so one of the bigger news stories that has come out here in the UK in connection with the ongoing Israel-Palestine conflict has been the response to British political language and discourse by ICJP Director and Tory MP Crispin Blunt, a guy who actually supports Rishi Sunak politically. He quite likes his boss, his leader. So you do wonder how many Tory MPs still actually admit to that right now, actually. But he's extremely concerned that Sunak and co really don't have a Scooby about the ramifications of their ardent pro-Israel stances. Blunt has been interviewed a lot by the mainstream media this week. This part of the conflict has gained some traction with them, unusually, given Blunt is a pro-Palestine campaigner. But he's also familiar with the relevant law here, more so than Burks like Keir Starmer certainly seem to be. And given his background is in the military, not the legal profession, that should be all the more embarrassing for Keith. Though I wonder if that same military background happened to shape his position regarding Palestine and Israel, that he sees it for what it is based on his own experience from where he comes from, and not through the coffers of the Israel lobby, as seems to be the case so often elsewhere. At any rate, in one interview, Blunt has said, "The United Kingdom government has given unequivocal support to the State of Israel. Statements repeated by the Prime Minister yesterday, and I'm uncertain that they fully understand the implications of the developments of international law, whereby if you are encouraging a party to undertake a war crime, you become complicit in that crime itself. It's absolutely clear now that what is happening in Gaza does amount to a war crime, because it is disproportionate and does not distinguish the targets it is taking out, hence the terrible number of children that have been killed, and what we've heard from the World Health Organization and their concerns about the effects of the transfers on the hospitals. A forced transfer of 1.2 million people is an absolute crime under the laws of war. You are simply not allowed to do it, as indeed is the collective punishment of the people of Gaza with a siege and an imposition of no food, no water, and no electricity." God, it's a horrible feeling to be in agreement with a Tory. I don't like it. But Blunt isn't wearing his politician's hat here, but a more humanitarian one. He drew attention to the number of children who have died. The population of Gaza, absurdly young as it mostly is, 40% of the population there are under 14, and 764 kids have been killed by Israel's indiscriminate attacks on Gaza in the last 7 days. And they aren't Hamas. They're collateral damage. Collateral that Israel, in their conduct, does not give a shit about, lending more weight to the case that those supporting the Israeli state, come what may, could end up being found guilty of being complicit in war crimes too. Fundamentally, the language coming from our government and too many other MPs risks them being declared complicit in war crimes. Perhaps seeing what Tony Blair has gotten away with, they figure they're safe, but I wouldn't bet on it this time around. Rishi Sunak, just the other day, a week after the incursion by Hamas into Israel that Egypt had warned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was about to happen, and were apparently ignored, Sunak said, "We stand with Israel, not just today, not just tomorrow, but always. And I stand with you, the British Jewish community, not just today, not just tomorrow, but always. Am Yisrael Chai." No words can begin to describe the horror and barbarism unleashed in Israel a week ago. Daughters, sons, mothers, fathers, husbands, wives, grandparents, taken from people in the cruelest and most horrific way possible. Hundreds of people have been killed, many wounded or missing, and others living through the unimaginable agony of having a loved one kidnapped and held hostage. British citizens were amongst the victims, and as we continue to learn more, I know there are families here and in Israel in deep pain and torment. My thoughts and my heart go out to everyone suffering in the wake of these attacks. No mention of Palestine once, you'll notice, and just like Keir Starmer, he addresses this nebulous, non-existent Jewish community, when there are many separate communities, and many of them, most of them I dare say, are condemning Israel and their occupation and their decades of violence. We stand with Israel always, he says. Well, this proves Crispin Blunt's point. If Israel are guaranteed your support, whatever they do, then what influence are you on forcing them to change tack and take a more humanitarian approach and act within international law, which they blatantly have not done? Sunak isn't alone in facing potential prosecution, though. Keir Starmer said Israel has the right to withhold water and food from Gaza, which is a war crime. As a human rights barrister, it was an appalling and stupid comment from a man who should know better. Now, he backpedaled, as I went over in another video, but has not apologised for those comments, nor has he actually withdrawn them, presumably too arrogant to do so. James Cleverly, Sunday morning, got the Victoria Derbyshire treatment. 2 weeks running. No Laura Kuenssberg. Politicians actually getting pushed. I could get used to that. But he was presented with multiple slides of people saying Israel has broken international law and ignored them completely, saying there's a lot of quotes you aren't showing which don't agree with them. Completely missing the point. Derbyshire pushed him by asking him, will you support Israel whether it breaks international law or not? And Cleverly gave a response saying, we are committed to international law. To which Derbyshire responded by asking, have you asked Israel to wait until civilians have moved out of northern Gaza? To which Cleverly said no. So in other words, you don't actually give a damn about the Palestinians either. Complicit. David Lammy said much the same on the same show. No surprise really, after his warm greeting in passing with Cleverly backstage, an image proving beyond doubt that there is absolutely nothing between the two main parties in this country anymore, and certainly not on this Palestine Israel issue. Lammy's getting a video of his own for his performance. That's coming next. But functionally, we're seeing politicians on both sides backing Israel, it seems, without question. And so Crispin Blunt and the ICJP have issued a notice of intention to prosecute over this matter. In a letter written to Rishi Sunak, the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly, and the Attorney General Victoria Prentice, the ICJP have issued a notice of intention to prosecute UK officials complicit in war crimes and a notice of risk of imminent commission of war crimes and crimes against humanity by Israel in Gaza. And it reads, we put the UK government on notice that we intend to bring legal proceedings against politicians in the UK and elsewhere where there is evidence that they have aided, abetted, or in any other way supported, encouraged, or provided material assistance in the commission of a war crime. In order to prevent legal action, the UK government must immediately 1. Issue a public statement condemning Israeli breaches of international law. 2. Ask each government official that has encouraged war crimes in Gaza to rescind their statements in public. 3. Insist Israel complies unequivocally with international law. 4. Immediately act to safeguard civilians in Gaza. 5. Call for an immediate ceasefire to prevent further loss of life. And 6. Call for an immediate end to the siege to allow secure access of medical aid to Gaza. We have passed a copy of this letter to Scotland Yard's War Crimes Unit, who have recently requested information and evidence in relation to terrorism and war crimes in the region. We will continue to assist them with gathering evidence in relation to the contents of this letter. We reserve our rights to proceed to apply for a private arrest warrant for politicians complicit in war crimes without further notice. Signed, Crispin Blunt MP and Tayeb Ali, ICJP directors. Will they follow through? Will we see politicians publicly rescinding comments? Will we see them facing arrest warrants? All eyes will very much be on Sunak and Starmer in this regard, but of course others as well. Sunak is to give a speech later today. He hasn't done so at time of writing, so perhaps he will rescind then, or perhaps he'll double down instead and effectively call out the ICJP's bluff. What our political leaders say on this matters. They have to be held accountable if they choose to be irresponsible in what they say. The ICJP might well be prepared to do so, but we shall see. As I was writing this, a similar letter from the ICJP has now been addressed directly to Keir Starmer. So opposition politicians, not least himself, are now very much on the ICJP radar, confirmed as they should be. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share and subscribe if you did. More content out daily. Meanwhile, here's a video recommendation where Starmer's backpedaling didn't quite cut it, doesn't go far enough, it isn't fooling anyone. He really does need to rescind. All eyes will be on him too. And I'll hopefully see you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.